Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Kate, Lincoln-Goldfinch here, sharing a live video for you about some updates on the CARES Act and the relief related to the coronavirus crisis and how it affects immigrants and their families. So we'll start with the CARES Act, which stands for the Corona Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. This is a bill that was passed last week. And is still being, implemented. And the primary thing that it does, well, I don't know if it's the primary thing, one of the main things that it does is provide cash relief to families in the United States. And so the payments are going to be issued either through check or through direct deposit for people who have received their tax refunds through direct deposit in the 2018 or 2019 tax year. The payment is going to be $1,200 for each individual, so $2,400 for married couples, and then $500 for each child in the family. The payment is based on the income of the family filed in the 2018 or 2019 tax year. So if you didn't file taxes for 2019 yet, they'll base it on the 2018 year. And the payments for people who earned more than $75,000 in the year are going to be reduced. And people who earned over $99,000 per year will not get a payout. And again, it's based on the tax return. So if you received a direct deposit in your 18 or 19 tax return, then as soon as this can get implemented, likely within 8 weeks is what I'm seeing and reading various articles, you'll just get an automatic direct deposit to your bank account. If you received your tax refund through check or you don't have the direct deposit set up with the IRS, they'll be mailing a check, and that sounds like it's going to be more like 4 months to be receiving those checks. Some economists are guessing that about 80% of people who filed tax returns in 2018 are going to qualify. One of the reasons I'm talking about it here with you today is because immigrants are thinking a lot about whether they're going to be eligible for relief and their families. And I'm sorry to say it's not good news, the coverage for immigrants and their families. Hi Fidel. So the question is, what if I haven't filed 2019 taxes? No problem. They're going to base it on your 2018 taxes. And here we go with, hola, Señora Galvan. The question about what if I have an ITIN number? Okay, and this is where I'm saying I don't think it's good news, because anyone who is a permanent resident, a U.S. citizen, or a resident alien, which would be someone who has a social security number, and this is a tax term, so it's related to how much time you've spent in the United States in the previous year. So we're talking about people who have DACA, they have a social security number, or who have like an H-1B visa, an L-1 visa. So these are people who have work permission and social security numbers, but don't have green cards. There's some complicated residence requirements to qualify. Essentially, it's if you've spent more than 31 days of 2020 in the United States and then over 183 days of the last 3 years. I think a general rule of thumb is if you're residing in the United States and you have been since 2018 under a work permit, you're going to qualify. You would be considered a resident alien. It's not quite that simple, but I think that's a good way to summarize it. The thing that I think is most disturbing is that what I'm reading is that the interpretation so far is that when a mixed status family has filed a tax return, meaning let's say mom is a U.S. citizen, dad doesn't have a work permit, but he has an individual taxpayer identification number, and they've filed jointly their taxes, it's looking like that family is not going to qualify for any CARES Act payment, including the U.S. citizen on the tax return, which is just awful. And hopefully there'll be some advocacy, and we'll see maybe the regulations might fix that. But for right now, that's the interpretation that I'm seeing by groups like the National Immigrant Justice Center. And of course, as always, we'll keep you guys posted on that. One of the other things that is included in the CARES Act is an extension of unemployment insurance through December 31st, and it adds an additional $600 per week on top of whatever the state unemployment insurance program pays. So it's quite a big boost to an unemployment benefit. We've had a lot of questions about, do immigrants qualify for unemployment? It's the same thing. So you would have a social security number and work permission to qualify for unemployment. And then we've had a lot of questions about, if I get unemployment or a CARES Act check, is that going to affect a public charge inquiry? And so the public charge comes into question when we're talking about someone who's applying for a green card through a family-based case. So let's say in this couple that, this example that I discussed, where mom's a U.S. citizen and dad has an individual taxpayer identification number, and let's say he's applying for his green card. He's in the middle of the process. Well, if mom gets unemployment insurance or CARES Act payout, is that going to affect dad's case? It should not at all, because unemployment insurance is not a federal means tested public benefit, nor is the CARES Act checks. They're considered like tax credits or tax payments. And so receiving benefits under the CARES Act should not affect a public charge inquiry. Medicaid is considered a federal means tested public benefit. So here's the thing about public charge is that immigrants aren't eligible, undocumented immigrants aren't eligible for things like Medicaid. So really we're always looking at, like, can the kids get insurance, and can the U.S. citizen parent get insurance? And those receiving benefits for relatives who are U.S. citizens or permanent residents are not going to affect the inquiry. This stuff can get a little bit complicated, and if you guys have questions, you are always welcome to post them here in these videos. If you want to speak privately, you can just message us through Facebook. Our phone number is 512-599-8500. You can call us. We have a free phone evaluation, and we're actually offering free phone consultations for people right now. We're doing virtual consultations. We remain open for business. We're not doing in-person appointments because we want to protect you and your families, and also ourselves and the people working at Lincoln-Goldfinch Law, but we are fully operational and we're here to support you guys. We have another question here. Is there any language about mixed status families? For example, a DACA holder, U.S. citizen, or LPR married to an undocumented immigrant. So because it's so recent, there isn't language in the bill about it. What I found was some sign-on letters and some press releases put out by the National Immigrant Justice Center. But this is why I say I feel like this is still kind of up in the air. And when the regulations, so the law gets passed, and then the executive branch sort of implements it through regulations. And I think that we might see, we'll definitely see some more clarification and hopefully some improvement on those fronts. So this is also brand new. Right now, it's looking like mixed status families would not get any checks. I am very hopeful that that will change. But to your question, Fidel, when I'm talking about a mixed status family, I'm saying one parent who is undocumented and has an ITIN, and then another, not necessarily a parent, a spouse, who has a social security number, and these two have done married filing jointly. We're not talking about just by virtue of being married or that they are mixed status, but let's say if mom filed married filing separately without her husband attached to her tax return and his ITIN attached to her tax return, that she would get the payout. So I know lots of you are thinking, wait, I haven't done my 2019 taxes. What do I do? I think for those of you who have not filed your taxes yet, I would sit tight. There's an extension on the tax return filing. I think we need to give this a little bit more time to settle and shake out, and we'll be advising you. We're not tax experts, but as I have more information about how this specifically affects immigrant families, I will be updating you. There's a lot of other stuff in the CARES Act, for small businesses. There's disaster relief loans, there's grants, there's the Paycheck Assistance Program for small business owners, and I'm not going to go into that detail here, partially because I'm I still need to do some reading up on it, but I also think it's not really relevant to this group as much. But I do want to do another update for you guys on just the status of the various immigration agencies and what's happening with them. So everything remains closed for appointments. So starting with, the U.S. consulates abroad are not having in-person appointments, and that's sort of until further notice. For people who have left the country in anticipation of a consular interview and who are stuck outside, there are some ways to be processed back in on an emergency basis. So if you are in that situation, I'm so sorry. And please do reach out to us, and we'll see if we can do what we can to help process you back in. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, they're the agency within the United States who process all the green cards and work permits and citizenship applications. They are closed. They've only announced through April 1st. I'm certain that will be extended. De nada, Señora Galvan. And so what they've said is, anyone who has a biometrics appointment or a green card interview or citizenship exam through April 1st is going to be automatically rescheduled. You do not have to call them. I'm certain that will be extended beyond April 1st. We've had a lot of questions for people who have biometrics appointments. A bit of good news is that we just received an announcement today that for people who are doing work permit renewals, they will be using the previously captured fingerprints and biometrics, so they will be processing work permit renewals for people who aren't able to do their biometrics right now. But we'll just keep you posted as we have updates on those interviews. ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they are the agency. Señora Galvan, she has a question about DACA renewals. So DACA renewals will be considered a work permit renewal. So DACA renewals should be processed as normal, and for anyone who has an expiring DACA in 2020, now is absolutely the time to file those renewals, because we're expecting a Supreme Court decision on the DACA cancellation this summer, likely in June. And DACA renewals are taking about 2-3 months right now. So if you have a work permit through DACA that's expiring in 2020, please file your renewal immediately so that you can get that extension processed and approved by the time the Supreme Court decision comes out. It's likely that they'll allow the cancellation of the program, and then people will be in limbo until Congress acts or doesn't. So I think it's going to be really important for you guys to get as much time under your work permits now as you can. And we can help you with those. Our fees are very low for DACA renewals. And so we're happy to help you guys, and we're able to process all of our cases virtually right now. In fact, we can now accept scanned signatures for submissions. So some of those restrictions have been lifted a little bit as well. Okay, I'm going to move on to ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. They're the agency, the sort of enforcement arm of Department of Homeland Security that picks people up. They're the ones who are arresting immigrants. I'm sorry to say that they are still seeming to be very active. We're seeing apprehensions for people, mostly people who have criminal histories or who have recent arrests. So we've been getting lots of calls from people who are getting arrested and transferred into ICE. We're not seeing a lot of ICE, sort of raids or just picking people up who don't have criminal histories or maybe deportations on their record. But detentions, the situation in detention centers is really dire right now, because lots of the people throughout the detention centers are testing positive for COVID, and so there's a lot of distress amongst the people in detention. They were getting out. We've been hearing reports of some rioting, and we are wanting to help you guys with those cases. So we're doing detained work. We're able to represent people remotely. Most of the judges are allowing us to appear telephonically, and we can communicate with people through telephone at least, or sometimes video or text message when they're detained. So we're here. We can help with those cases. As always, you can message us through Facebook or send us a text message or call us at 512-599-8500. But it is very distressing, and we need to try and get as many people out from immigration detention as possible. We are seeing some parole approvals. So for people who may have previously been denied bond or parole by immigration. We're seeing some approvals now after coronavirus. So it's worth a shot trying to apply again if you've previously been denied. And then, of course, anyone who has an outstanding deportation order, those people are at risk of getting picked up at any moment. And it's very difficult to block a deportation once someone already has an order and they get picked up. For people from Mexico, they can get sent home within 24 hours. So if anyone watching this video knows someone who has an outstanding deportation order, maybe an absentia, maybe they didn't get notice of their hearing, should definitely contact us now so that we can begin the work on reopening that deportation hearing, ordering the copy of the file that we need to know what happened, doing all of the preliminary work, because it's really hard when we get called because the person's been picked up and they already have a deportation order and then we're scrambling to stop it. Now is the time to do the preparatory work to get ready. And with all that being said, you know, immigration is still open and operating. They may not be having interviews for people, but they're still processing applications. And so now is a good time. If you're at home and you've been meaning to get started or you've been meaning to gather your documents, now is a time to use the time that you have at home to get ahead of the surge that's going to happen when things finally do open back up. So as always, we're here for you guys. Just give us a call, shoot us a message, or you can put a comment here. And we're putting together a webinar where we're going to talk about a lot of this, all of this stuff and how it affects immigrants and sort of a bigger picture. That's going to be either at the end of the week or early next week. And as always, we'll be announcing it here on the Facebook page. But thanks for being here with me today, and I'll see you guys real soon.